This is very bad. This is bad. Guys, this isn't good. This isn't good at all. I was gonna title this video something completely different, talking about All For One in general, but I just realized what All For One really did to himself, and things are so much worse than I was about to say in this video. So let's talk about infinite 100% All For One after that intro. Hit it! This is bad, guys. So in My Hero Academia chapter 364, we have, of course, cutting back to All For One's area, the reveal of All For One's full face and everything. I mean, most of the chapter, he does spend it with half of his face still being rewinded or half of his face still not being visible to the camera for some reason. And I mean, I can't imagine that that's on purpose, that Horikoshi is hiding half of his face still, even though, you know, he's pretty much completely rewinded himself, or if it's just kind of like cloaking All For One in energy, right? And keeping, it's just a coincidence that it's half of his face. But you know me, conspiracy theorist pineapple, I'm wondering if there's freckles on half of the face. I'm still holding on. But what are we here to actually talk about in this video, right? In this video, I want to talk about the dangers of All For One and everything that he's doing in this chapter. But I guess we also have to focus on the fact that All For One, in a strange way, in a strange turn of events, has weirdly and incidentally created an infinite 100% version of himself, right? If you remember, in the overhaul arc with Deku and Eri, we saw Deku using Eri, pretty much having Eri on his back using her quirk, to rewind himself constantly to pretty much undo all the damage that he was doing to his body so that he wouldn't continuously be rewound by Eri's quirk. Well, in My Hero Academia chapter 364, we saw that All For One is actually in a very, very similar circumstance, right? Now, we were wondering when this reveal happened that All For One rewinded himself back to his prime, when he would have ever had time to get anything from the doctor, since we know the doctor was arrested before he broke out of prison, when he would have gotten time to take Eri's quirk from any of the bullets or anything like that, because we thought most of the bullets were destroyed when Shigaraki was awoken, right? So what ended up happening with that, right? And in this chapter, we get the answer that the doctor, ever planning, because, you know, he's hundreds of years old, so naturally you do have to make plans for when things happen. The doctor, along with a brand new mask for All For One that actually does quite remind me of some of Nine's gear from Heroes Rising. It does have those kind of tubes that stick out of it on the back and in the front, and it goes kind of like a old bad Batman mask, right? Where it looks like, how do you turn your head in that? I don't think you really can. You just have to kind of look forward and turn your body awkwardly. But yes, the doctor created a new mask for All For One that did hold some of his life support technology inside of it to keep All For One completely safe while he was fighting the heroes in his kind of ravaged after the All For One All Might fight form. However, along with that, we see that the doctor leaves a voice message for All For One, and he says, hey, you know, your smile and everything is precious to me, because we know that the doctor is a very, very big All For One fanatic. In this chapter, it looks a little more like legit love than just kind of fanaticism. But he leaves All For One a voice message saying, hey, I have this girl's quirk information that we got from the bullets and everything, and I've made a one-use item for you, right? And this item, you will only be able to use it once, but hopefully it'll be some sort of help when you go up against these heroes if you do find yourself in a dangerous situation. So All For One took this vial and the mask, and then he came to this battlefield, and then once Endeavor pushed him all the way to the limit, the final limit of what he can handle without just completely dying, he used this vial that the doctor left behind and rewinded himself back to his prime, right? Or is at least on the path to rewinding himself back to his prime. Now, this obviously completely healed All For One, and All For One didn't have any sort of regeneration quirk. That was given over to Shigaraki when Shigaraki got his copy of All For One, right? Before or during the time of the doctor's surgery, right? That we see at the end of the last season of My Hero Academia. So we know All For One's been fighting Endeavor and Hawks and everyone without any sort of regeneration quirk, but in this instance, now that he's being completely rewinded over and over again with Eri's quirk, that effectively does give him super regeneration, right? It gives him an almost better form of hyper regeneration, because even in this chapter, we see that Hawks tries to slice open All For One's face, right? As All For One jumps down and steals some random hero's quirk, because there is a giant battlefield going on below them, he steals a random hero's quirk, and we see that Hawks comes flying in at top speed and slices All For One in the face, and immediately, before All For One even finishes the sentence, it starts closing up and healing, right, and filling with that Eri rewind energy. So we know that now pretty much All For One does have a healing quirk, and he is back in his prime, right? And he even comments himself that his body feels as light as silk, or as it's pretty much just weightless to him compared to the body that he's been lugging around with all the injuries and everything up until this point so far. So All For One, who is extremely fast and capable, dives down and steals his quirk and gets hit by Hawks, and also grabs some clothes while he's at it, because he even says himself that he doesn't really look all that good naked, though a lot of the fandom clearly disagrees because people have been thirsting. I see y'all. Let me point y'all out real quick. Let me expose y'all. I see y'all thirsting over All For One. What's wrong with you? But it's during all this that All For One really spills the details entirely on everything that's going on with him and what his plans are. He says that Eri's rewind quirk, or the quirk that he stole from the vial or the bullets thanks to the doctor, will not stop activating on his body, right? It's going to keep rewinding him until he is literally a baby, and then even before that. So that means we might even see like young All For One or teen All For One, or pretty much the All For One that's around the same age as Deku is right now. And I think that would be really, really interesting, just to kind of get the parallel to them using child soldiers right in this war, and then having to fight the ultimate child soldier in All For One going through his Benjamin Button situation. But also I think it'd be interesting to see if All For One looks anything like Deku, right, when he was younger, because we haven't really gotten to see them from that perspective, right? From that age. We've seen like, I believe we've seen like flashbacks to younger All For One, but it's not back when he was like a high schooler, right? It's definitely back to when they were at least still young adults at most. So that is another possibly interesting thing that we're gonna see as a result of everything that's going on with All For One's body. But he does not seem very bothered by it, right? He doesn't seem bothered by the fact that right now he's on a definite timer towards death, right? Because in his eyes, everything that he's needed to do thus far is already completed. From his perspective, Shigaraki is completed. He's not aware that there's the Tenko inside of Shigaraki, because the All For One inside of Shigaraki just found that out, right? And they can't really share information in that way. So he's not really completely aware that there's a Tenko inside of Shigaraki that can still be let out to have Shigaraki be saved. So he feels like all of his plans are completely just ready to go, right? And he even says that his only job at this point is to take out as many heroes as he possibly can to make way for the new world that is to come. And All For One also tells us that inherently villains do bad things, right? And bad things are seen by society as things that kind of get in the way of progress, right? Things that kind of take us a step back or get in the way of things that we're trying to do that we would see as good. So All For One says that all he's ever actually wanted to do was get in the way of the world itself, to pretty much completely obstruct the future of the world. And it definitely seems like for a long time he's absolutely been able to do that. Anytime the heroes have any sort of progress of society or here and there, here comes All For One popping his head back in and doing experiments. Even in Vigilantes, he was doing experiments and not letting people lead peaceful lives. And that all goes back to what All Might said, right? Back when he was fighting All For One in Camino. That All For One is really the kind of person that just can't let people live normal lives without having grandiose dreams about being heroes or anything like that. Even the regular civilians, he tramples on their dreams and then laughs about it, right? It brings him pleasure and it brings him joy. And that's one of the things that makes All For One worse than anyone else, right? He thinks everything that belongs to everyone else actually belongs to him, so he can do what he sees fit with it because he's the person who should be in charge. Now, getting back to the scariest aspect of this video, what are the heroes going to do in this situation, right? Because if you didn't think that Prime All For One was dangerous enough already, despite the fact that we know that he lost his regeneration quirk to Shigaraki and he shouldn't have one now we have Prime All For One along with what is effectively a healing quirk, right? Despite the fact that he has a countdown and he can only live for so long during this battle, we still know that at the end of the day, he's going to be healing through anything that Endeavor or Hawks do to him, right? So what's stopping him from just decimating decimating them and going to whatever battlefield that he wants to go to? What's stopping him from taking out Tokoyami and all the heroes there and stealing all their quirks and just hopping over to the Shigaraki battlefield and making sure things go as planned, or hopping over to the Toga battlefield or the Dabi battlefields or anything like that, right? So I feel like the only thing that's maybe keeping Endeavor safe is the fact that I do think him and Dabi are going to see each other again before the end of the series, but that might not even be the case. Maybe Dabi would get to All for One's area and see, hey, the job is already done. Sorry. You know, I couldn't control you, you can't control me, buddy. Now I'm gonna go be a bad dad myself, be right back. But with the threat of a nearly infinite 100% All for One lingering, I really don't know what the heroes are gonna do, right? They have an All for One that is back in his prime and is healing through all injuries and anything that happens to him, any burns, anything like that. It's really, really baffling, right? And I guess the bigger question at play would be, now that All for One is continuously rewinding, right? What happens to the quirk that he just stole? Wouldn't he just lose that right away, right? Or wouldn't he just start losing all the quirks that he's gained over his history? Or did the doctor do something to pretty much make Eri's quirk only work on All for One in a physical sense, right? So it's not actually rewinding all the quirks that he has. But I mean, I guess that would also be a nerf for All for One in and of itself, because if it doesn't rewind all the quirks that he has, then he would have the same loadout that he had at the beginning of the battle and wouldn't have been rewinded with like all of his quirks that he had back when he fought All Might, right? So it's going to be interesting to see where the logic here goes, or if Horikoshi just kind of wants us to turn our brains off to All for One getting his old loadout, but still keeping all the quirks that he's getting right now on the battlefield, or maybe he can only use them for a very short while. I don't really know. I don't really know what the logic there is, right? But I guess we're gonna see. And yeah, All for One is here to decimate the battlefield. He pretty much has his own version of Infinite 100%, and we saw what that allowed Deku to do to Overhaul. So I'm very, very excited to see what All for One, who fought All Might, Prime All Might, is gonna be able to do to these heroes. Let's just hope for them that that rewind kicks in very fast and just makes him a baby and then nothing as soon as possible, because it seems like All for One is here to do some damage, right? And the more time that he has, the more damage he's gonna do. So this is Pineapple. I'll see you guys later. Please check out my reaction to My Hero Academia after chapter 364, which I released yesterday, along with my Bakugo is Saved video, which is my full spoiler video for the week if you want to check those out. And I'll see you guys later. I love you. Peace.